Hello everyone, I'm Melanie with Painting Crafty, and tonight is Draw Along Tuesday. So I'm going to be teaching you step by step of how to draw this sweet little Easter duckling. And I'm going to be showing you step by step, and I'm going to be showing you the drawing steps as well as the watercolor steps. Since I'm showing you watercolor steps, the watercolor paper I'm going to be using is the Canson brand 140-pound watercolor paper. It's a great watercolor paper. It's still considered, let me turn the slide on, it's still considered a student grade watercolor paper, which means that it is reasonably priced, and you can find it easily online, or even I believe at Joann Fabrics and Michaels. They both carry it there. It's a great paper. You can also use acrylic paint on there if you would like. If you want to paint on acrylic, you can do it on watercolor paper. I'm going to be using some other simple materials, just a regular old mechanical pencil. Tonight I'm going to be using let's see, I think I'm going to be using this set of student grade watercolor tonight. I'll just be using this little simple set. It's one that you can easily find that as well. Sometimes I might throw in a little bit, depending on my color selection that's in this set. I could throw in a little bit of the Rubin paint as well. So I'm going to have both of those off to the side. I do like to use two different kinds of erasers. The polymer eraser, this one here, it is a high polymer Pentel one. This works great for erasing all my grid lines that I like to put on my paper. And then I also have a kneaded eraser. This works great for picking up your graphite left over from your pencil drawings. So both of those erasers are good. I usually have at least a little piece of paper towel in my hand to be able to use for my watercolor. And the watercolor brushes tonight I'm going to be using are the Velvet Touch Princeton brush series. A 6 and a 10 is what I'm going to be using this evening. It's a nice little watercolor brush. They're not that expensive, and they'll last you a long time too. Hello everyone. When you pop on, go ahead and say where you might be watching from. I'm streaming into YouTube and to Facebook tonight, so welcome on either different platforms. If you're watching on Facebook, if you wouldn't mind just sharing me out. If you're watching on YouTube, a few thumbs up would be great and helpful. They both have small little channels. I'm just beginning to grow, so I always appreciate whatever anybody can do to help me out. Well, let's go ahead and start. I'm going to be working on a 6x6. Oh, before I forget to, I do have a Ko-fi page, which is like a Patreon page. And it is a simple subscription membership there. You would get the tracers for the drawings. I know not everybody likes to draw, but if you like to paint, you can get on a subscription list. And then I include the tracers for all of my drawings there that you can be able to find. So easy to do, very reasonably priced. You can pop over there and see. Well, hello, Donna. Thanks for watching on YouTube tonight. I so appreciate it. And hi, Susan. Thanks for coming on and sprinkling me out. I so appreciate it. And I think I said hi to Gloria. Thanks everyone for popping on in. Let's go ahead and start. So it's a 6x6. Let's do big screen or a big picture little me. So let's do it this way. Hopefully tonight, fingers crossed, internet will be playing nice and I won't have any problems. I can move you down a little bit too, just to bring in just a little bit closer. We'll see how that works tonight. If you're noticing problems, please let me know. I can't control the whole screen switching thing, but which I have no idea why it's happening, but it is. So let's go ahead and draw this little sweet picture. So when I do my drawings, I always like to go down the center as a guide mark and then across the center here. Now tonight I'm going to be adding a few more little grid lines on there. I'm going to come here with a half this direction and halfway here as well. Now this is just for people who are kind of been drawing for a while and you might be wanting to hone your skills in just a little bit more. This will be a great way to add to your drawing skills and look a little bit closer at what you're seeing and see if you can figure out some guidelines and draw a little bit even more precise. But if you're just beginning, just line down and line down. That will just help you get an idea of how big and how small I'm drawing things. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start with her circle face. Now the sweet cuteness that happens for this face is that it's slightly off. If you notice, here's the center line. It's kind of got a little bit of a cockeyed look to her. Her eyes are slightly slanted. Her beak is off to the side, and that just gives her that little bit of a tilt of her head, and that's what gives her that little sweet little look. So let's go ahead and start with my circle right here. So I'm going to come up a ways because her neck is up on there. Here's my center line coming across here. I want to bump up just a little bit to be able to do my circle. I miss you too. I'm glad you're here tonight. Let's go ahead and do our circle. Let's come up just a little bit right here. Now this circle is, well, bigger than a quarter, of course. I don't know. Let's see. Maybe I could measure it, and that might even be a little bit more helpful if you're trying to hone in your drawing skills. This is about 1.5 inches around. And that'll give you a nice size head. You still want to have room for your ears. So when you're doing your picture, it might be helpful to come up. I put a registration mark here where the bottom of my circle is going to be. I might want to put a registration mark here at where I want the top of my circle to go. That's going to allow enough room to be able to put some nice size ears on there. So let's go ahead and make that circle. I like to do a sketch kind of motion with my hand. This just loosens my hand up a little bit. Plus, I can't draw a circle just in one motion. If you need to have a little bit more help and you want to have a more perfect circle, grab something that's a round circle and just trace around it. That sometimes helps. Circles aren't necessarily all that easy to draw when you're first getting used to drawing. We're going to come around like this. Okay. I'm thinking I'm pretty okay with it. Where you want to make a check is to see, how much space is be here? Look at your negative space. So I know, I can tell by my eye that this space on my right is wider than it on this side. So if I want to add more to get more of a round look, I can add to this side of my circle. Depending on how much you want to train your eye, really look at your pieces and spend a little time just taking a look at what you're drawing. Okay, so I'm a firm believer that the better your drawing skills get, the better painter you're going to get too, because you're training your eyes to look at shapes, looking at different contrasts, looking at your negative shape as well as your positive shapes. Those are all going to help with your painting skills as well. So I've got my little circle on. Now let's work on that sweet little face. So you see how her eyes are at an angle here. So they're not exactly right across from each other. That we're going to put her eyes in first, because then that will help line up where you're going to put the center of your beak. So lay your eyes in first, and then you can put your beak in. So each time it could be slightly different. I'm going to put my one eye here. I can do a sideways line if that helps for me to draw. I can add a little bit of a guide mark so I can tell where are my eyes going to go. So I'm going to do right here. The one I did, her original one I did, it was closer to the center eye here, was closer to that center mark, and then a little bit farther off here to the center. Now I never can draw the same 2 times in a row, and I don't have to, but it just gives me an idea. Hi, Cynthia, thanks for coming on and sprinkling. Thanks so much. Now I can go ahead and lay my line in. Now I'm going to look to see where the middle of my eyes are. I'm going to go at an angle. And this is going to help me line up where my beak goes. So your beak is going to be different than mine, but I'm going to start with a shape that is a triangle shape. It's going to be narrower up here. You can actually draw a triangle if you wanted to, and then round your areas off if that helps you a little bit better. So I'm going to start with a triangle, and I'm going to come across. But to get it to look like a duck, we're going to round our areas off. So a duck has a longer beak than what a chick would be. When we did our chick, we did a shorter, squattier looking beak. Okay, so I have my triangle in. Now let's round that off a little bit. So I'm going to erase my guide marks here. I'm going to round this off here at the top, and then I'm going to round this bill here. So I want to make this a little bit kind of more like a smile face shape, where it's going to come around and then up and down. So now I've got a nice little gentle beak on my duck. Now we're going to put a couple little nose holes in here for the little breathing holes. Those are going to be farther up towards the back. They're going to be back that direction is where you're going to put those little holes. Now I've got my little sweet face set up. Of course, she looks different than my original one, but still pretty similar. Let's go ahead and pop those ears in so we have an idea of where we're going to be putting our ears. I'm going to leave a little bit of a room to do a flower crown in the center. So I'm going to start off to the side. Now my ears, the way I drew them, they're going to be narrower here. They're going to come up. They're going to get wider and then come back down. Now I did draw this part here, so it looks like it's slightly turned. You have an inside and an outside. This part here. And that's how I look they kind of remind me of boomerangs. If you think of a boomerang shape, is what those little ears are. Now you could draw them slightly different, put a little twist in them. If you want to try a little bit of a twist, you could do something like that. But I wanted to give her some big, old, nice bunny ears. She looks like an Easter duckling with those little bunny ears. This one's going to come up, come around, down. This is my boomerang shape I got going on here. So I'm going to have that little bit of a curve and then come in a little narrower. So you can see how it kind of looks like a boomerang shape up there. All right, so we have that part. Now let's add a little bit more of a twist. So I'm going to come here, make the top like we would see the top of her ear a little bit, and then we're going to come in and get even like that. So this will be the inside, that's the outside. And let's come over here and duplicate the same thing here. We're going to come up and then around. But you can also draw these like one is completely folded over. You draw yours the way you want to, and I'll be looking forward to seeing how everyone's little interpretations come out on the drawings, because everybody's turns out differently, and it doesn't have to look like mine to be good. And I always enjoy sharing your things. So if you draw one, pop it into my Facebook page underneath the graphic of this, and I'd love to share it and encourage others, because I think you're just as much of an encourager to the people who follow along as I am, because they can see there's all different ways to do these little drawings. Now to do the little flowers, I just did simple little round flowers with just a little bit of detail in there, a few little leaves. So I'm just going to loosely, I'm going to erase the top of her head because I know I'm not going to need that. I don't want that to be shown. And I'm just going to lay in some spiral jiggly jiggly flowers and having them kind of going different directions. So this one might be here, changing the centers out just a little bit. I'm going to pop in a few more here. These are just simple jiggly jiggly little simple flowers, nothing too fancy. Now I'm going to come across here and give me some leaves. So I'm going to come down, and this will be, they'll shape up a little bit more when I put my color in there. And let's see, maybe let's have some go up. What will look good to make a good crown is if you have some going one direction, some going another. So this one's going down, that leaf will be going up. Let's put maybe a bigger leaf here, like maybe a bigger leaf. Let's put a little grouping of leaves here. So just take a look, about usually odd. So like if you have 3, add a 4th, you could add a 4th in there or a 5th. I'm gonna maybe do one here, a little bigger. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's stop. I don't want to go any farther than that. All right, let's pop that neck in. So now she's got a little bit higher of a neck, and it's going to be rolling back down into her shoulders and going to be coming around. So let's pop in the neck a little bit. So I know my neck is going to be here. It's going to be slightly different than the original one I drew, but that's okay. I'm going to still start this direction down. And before I reach my center line, I'm going to start doing my neck. Or shoulders is what I want to say. So there's the shoulders. Let's go ahead and draw the egg next. So the egg shape, a good way to draw an egg is to draw your biggest circle down here first. And then you're going to draw a little circle. I'm going to call it a snowman. You're going to draw this snowman shape, and then you're going to connect your shapes off to the side. And that's how you're going to create a simple egg shape. So let's take a look at that. Here was when I divided that shape off, down another one down below. My egg is going to be sitting, the bottom part is below this registration mark. So I'm going to take a look here. This is below that registration mark. I'm going to start with a circle, kind of like in between her body here of where I want that circle to be. So there's going to be like the bottom of my snowman or the bottom of my egg. And then I'm going to put a smaller circle on top. That will be the beginning of my egg. Do this lightly so you can easily erase it. Now let's connect our egg. So I'm going to come off to the side, go around like so, and then I have my egg. And I'm going to erase this part here in the middle and open this up. Let's take a look at what the shape looks like and if it looks like an egg. Well, it pretty much looks like an egg. I think I need to make it a little bit more pointed at the top to make it a more of an egg shape, and then round. But that will just help you figure out your proportions and give you a nice egg shape. And there we have our egg shape. Okay, so we've got that part done. Now let's go ahead and work on the little wings. So her wings are kind of like arms. They have a little bit of a human quality to these little storybook creatures, but it's going to keep on coming out this direction. It's going to come around and then just kind of either like a little W, or you can do like a W shape or an M shape. It's just a little bit of a look like a feather and not a really big, strong one. Hi, Michelle. Thanks for coming on tonight. So let's go this direction. So now I'm going to start curving it around. If you think of like it's an arm or an elbow, we're going to be coming in front of our egg. I'm going to do like a little M shape, just a tiny bit, and then come back. Erase whatever might be over your wing, because the egg is going to be behind and the wing will be in front. And then let's curve it back this way here. We're going to come down, take a look at where you drew this one. You could always do like a little invisible line, put a little tick there so you'll have an idea of where you ended your last one. There we go. And then this is going to come up here. Erase what might be in between, inside of your little wing. And then now all of a sudden the egg is behind and your little wings are on top. Let's go ahead and build those legs next. Let's take a look at how I drew the legs. These are pretty narrow little legs because they're going to be a little bit wider back here and then get narrower as they come forward. I kept them pretty close to the center. This one's a little bit lower, but I'm thinking if you keep within that next line down, you'll have a nice look of like her legs are to the side of her. So I'm going to take a look here of where it makes sense on my picture this time. I'm going to start up here, come out. So this one's coming down. I'm going to start a little bit lower and then I'm going to go move it in. So it's kind of a triangle-ishy feel where the top of my triangle would be here and I'm going back. That'll just give it a little dimension. Now let's go the other way. So I'm going to come down this direction. I'm going to come in here, come out towards that little triangle shape. There, we got it. Now a duck foot has got some webs on it on the toes. So it's going to be this shape where it's narrower here and gets wider. You're going to have a swoop, and down. So do that shape again. So let's start here. We're going to do wide at my toes, scoop it down, and then it's going at a V. So we're going to have that V shape, like so. This is the center toe. That's going to be the highest. We're going to swoop it down and then swoop it back over there. And there we have our little duck feet. Cute. So let's do that kind of longer U shape. Get those cute old, big old duck foot. So it's kind of a U going out this direction. I'm going to put a point here in the middle. That's going to be my highest point. Swoop it down to create those little web toes, and back we go. Okay, there we go. All right, now so take a look, take a break, take a look at your picture. Does it look right? Hi, Kelly Rose, thanks for coming on. Hi, Aunt Linda, thanks for popping on tonight. So we have, does it look right? So stop, take a look. I always like to look at my camera because I can see things in my camera that I don't see when I'm looking at it exact. But I think she looks pretty cute. The only thing is maybe I want to make my egg a little bit wider here, maybe a little bit more rounded at the bottom so I don't have a flat egg, because eggs are not flat. Okay. All right. There we go. All right, Melanie, stop. No more. All right, let's go ahead and pop in a background. So take a look at your picture. I'm going to be shooting for around this area. This is where I divided it in half over there again, up between these little ones here. So I'm going to go higher than that. So here's my midpoint. I'm going to go about halfway between my egg and the background and create kind of a background. Now let's erase some of these extra lines because it's starting to get confusing. Take your eraser, erase some of your guidelines, and I'm going to erase these. And when I get done erasing my guidelines, I'm going to be putting that little pattern in behind. And then I'm going to be using the gum eraser to erase the graphite marks so they're not so heavy. My pencil marks aren't so heavy. Okay, there we go. I'm going to use my little dust vacuum. That works the best for picking up the pencil bitsies, the eraser bitsies. It works the best if you use that. It really does help to get those pencil bitsies all picked up, because then they're not going to get into your watercolor paint when you're working on your watercolor. Now let's go ahead and create this pattern here at a diagonal. I'm just going to start in the corner here and lightly come across right like that. And I'm going to come over again. If I run into my duckling, just pick your pencil up, go around it, and keep on going at an angle all the way across to create this real simple diagonal kind of look. Now to do this part, I'm going to start here in my corner, and I'm going to come up and go the opposite direction. So here's I ended here. So I'm going to come up there, end it here. If you run into your duck, just pick your pencil up. Now I'm going to come over here and do 1, 1. Now this one is a little bit bigger pattern. If you want a smaller one, you could add another set of diagonals in there, but I'm going to keep it big just because I want it kind of simple. Now to do the little wallpaper look here, all I did is repeat some of the flowers that I did on the crown. I also did that look there. You just want to stagger it. So like this one, there's 1, 2. So now I have 1 higher, 1 in between that and that. So create a pattern that looks like a little wallpaper is just to do that. Now I just did mine freehand. I didn't really measure. I just eyeballed it to give it a real easygoing kind of a look to it. You could start in the middle if you wanted to. Divide this up into thirds. Come down, come over here. If you want to do a ruler, you could take out your ruler and actually measure it and do more of a refined look if you would like to do that. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Perfect. I'm happy with 5. Now I'm just going to take a look here to see where it makes sense to add my little flowers. So I'm going to do 1 there, 1 here. Okay, so now I need to put them in between. So this one I'm going to put here. I'm going to put 1 lower. So it's lower than that. And then a partial one it would see here. Now I wouldn't see this one because it's probably behind my duck, and the rest of them are going to be behind. So that means this one was going to start here. That means I have to pop up and do this one over here. Okay, so that one is up. Then we have to look here. We're going to put 1 here, like so. Come down and add it there. Now let's do the opposite. So maybe we'd see a little bit here, and then a little bit here. Now each of these do have just a real informal leaf, so I'm just going to put in a couple leaves. You decide the pattern that you want, if you have a pattern. Okay, I'm going to come here and there. These look really sweet done in the watercolor because you can just give it a very much a relaxed, loose look and not have anything too formal with that. All right, let's go ahead and take my kneaded eraser. So I'm going to come in here, take my kneaded eraser. This is when I'm going to lighten up my pencil work. I do have a heavy hand, but I also have to draw a slightly darker for you to be able to see it. But even if you're at home and using your pencils, this is just a great way to pick up some of your pencil marks. And if you're not planning, especially if you're not planning on doing a lot of ink work for your drawing, lighten this all up. This will help so it doesn't smear in the background. Lightens it all up and will make a better quality. Mine is still probably going to be a little darker than what normal, just because I drew so heavy. But that way you can see what I'm doing and you'll hopefully be able to follow along easier if you can see it better. So let's go ahead and start with our watercolor. Let's see, I think I'm going to use this color set tonight. It has some golds in it. The duck, I worked with some gold and some yellow ochre color. But maybe I want to try my other set too. I can't 100% decide. Let's see. Maybe I'll use this one. I do like the browns and the golds in this set better than I do in my other one. Oh, this is what I was talking about, how sometimes your colors jump out of those little holders and you could get them loose, and how important it is to write the names on the bottom so you know what color it is. So you can go ahead and pop it in the right place so you know what they are. Sometimes more than one will pop out, and if you're not super familiar with the name of your paint, it's hard to figure out what they are. Plus, it's good if you want to reorder it. You can always know what the color is on the bottom too. Keep your cards, keep those things so you're able to tell what you're going to do. Now with the watercolor, you always want, if you're new to watercolor, when you get your set, you do want to make a watercolor card. This will be super helpful in determining what your colors look like because they do look so different in your pans and versus what they're going to look like on your paper. So do that for yourself, even if you're using markers and that's what you're choosing to use as your watercolor, which you can use markers. Any water-based marker will work great as a watercolor as well. Just you're going to want to set that up so you know what color you're going to be working on. So I'm going to pick up some of the color called yellow ochre, which is kind of just a nice, warm, earthy color. I'm going to start with some of that. I'm going to mix it to tea consistency, which means there's more water and less pigment. With watercolor, you always start light and then work your way dark. So I'm going to start with less pigment and more water. So I'm working with a color, I'm going to be working with like this color right here. I'm using my number 6 brush is where I'm going to start, and I'm going to start laying some of this yellow ochre on my little duck. So I'm going to come in and just lay some of this color. Now around his eyes, I did leave a brighter shade of like pure white of the paper. I'm going to try to leave that same look. I like the way that looked at the end, just to give that little brightness around his eyes. With watercolor, it's preferable if you actually do leave a little bit of the paper showing. That's your brightest whites. When you do watercolor, once those brightest whites are gone, you can't get them back unless you add like a white gouache or a white pen work. So it's actually preferable, leave some of your white paper showing because those are going to be your brightest, lightest brights. With watercolor, you're basically painting the shadows. So these are the lightest colors, and then I will be adding my shadows on top of it. Okay, let's move this all up so we make sure we're in camera. All right, so let's come down here, add a little bit on here. Now I know all of this will be in shadow. This is going to be going darker because this is his neck, and you wouldn't see, it would all be in shadow. So I'm going to mostly cover this up and not leave a lot of the white. When I'm putting this first layer on, I'm not having a lot of puddles on my paper. If you add too much water right away, you're going to notice some blooming of your colors. It's the separation. Separation of your pigments is what's happening there. So you want to have your paper wet, but you don't want huge puddles. So if you start noticing some separation of your colors when you're doing this, it's because you have a lot of water on there. So you need to back it up. If you do get a lot of water on there, take your paintbrush, give it a squeeze, take out the color, and then you can actually lift some of your pigment. So you can do a little bit of changing by doing that. Well, I'm glad you stopped in, Donna. Thanks for popping in tonight. Now the legs, I'm going to be doing a brighter orange to match his feet. So I'm going to switch a little bit in that color. I'm going to go to more of a bright, kind of a bright orangish color. So I'm going to switch it up a little bit. That might even be a little bit, well, maybe we'll start with that color. Definitely more water than pigment with this color because this will be the lightest pigment color. So I'm going to lay some of that on my feet. I'm going to try to leave some white parts on this one. So I'm going to try to leave some white paper showing. You could always cover up the white. You just can't bring it back. Okay, so let's come over here. Like there might be a bright white at the top of his leg. So I'm going to leave just a little bit of it there. Kind of come down here and add some on. Let's see, I'm going to try to leave a white spot on this foot too. And like I said, I can always fill it in. Okay, there we go. All right, let's work a little bit on the inside of his ears. Let's do a little bit of kind of a soft corally color. I have some red here. I'm going to add a lot of water to this color. Mostly water, just a tiny bit of pigment. Give this a tap. And I'm going to blush some of this color in. So it's kind of like a light coral color. I'm going to try to leave a little bit of brightness in there too and not fill it all the way in. Right here and add a tiny bit of, now that's pretty wet. I'm going to pick up some of that yellow ochre that I had started with before. And I'm gonna tap in a little bit of that yellow ochre into that blushy color and see if I can't even make even more kind of a coral color. So I'm just tapping in a little bit of that color. This would be a blend on blend or wet on wet look. So my color's wet and I'm adding a wet color on top. So that's going to do its little watercolor magic where it's going to blend itself and not have to do a lot of work with that color. So I'm just taking advantage of that my color is wet, my paper's wet, and then I'm going to add another color on top of it. Watercolor always wants to travel wherever wherever the water is, so it's going to want to travel and blend together. Now I'm going to take up that same color, that same yellow ochre color, and I'm going to mix it over here. This time maybe a little less water and still about the same amount of pigment. And let's do my next layer. So I'm going to come in. I know that this would be darker up here because the flowers would be creating a shadow. I'm going to still try to leave some of that white. I don't want to cover up everything I put on because remember, those are my brightest colors. So I'm going to layer in my next layer of shadows. Come around his eyes. And I'm just pushing and pulling the color. So let's come down here. Let's work a little bit on this one. Okay, now while that's still wet, I am going to pick up a little bit of some rusty color here. I'm just going to have that off to the side and I'm going to pick up just a little bit. Now this is wet and I'm going to tap it in here just to create a darker color. And I'm tapping it in and my colors are wet and so that color is just going to kind of sit and do its watercolor magic there. All right, let's use that same color that I used on my duck feet. Let's take that same kind of orangish color and let's add that to the bill here. Now I definitely want to try to leave a white area on that bill. I'm going to leave a white space. I'm going to take that same color and I'm going to add a little less water this time. Here we go. And then we're going to add another layer of that onto the feet. They're going to go darker orange. So this is like my next shadow color. I'm trying not to cover up all of that brighter color underneath there. Like so, there we go, looking bright and cheery. Tap a little bit more underneath there. Now I'm going to pick up, I did a gray for his ears, and let's see what I've got for a gray here. I don't really have a very good gray in this set, so let's do brown this time. So I have this kind of like a nice little umber color. Let's take a little bit of that. We'll make it a chocolate bunny ears maybe this time. So we'll do that kind of that little umber color here. We'll start with a wash that's there. Okay, so I'm going to come up here on his ears. I'm going to tap this a little bit so make sure I don't have too much water on there. And let's put in a little bit of that color. It will still look good, even though I don't have the gray this time with this set. I might leave a bright white on the top if I can, add a little bit around. Okay, yeah, I think that's going to look good. That'll look good. Okay, let's work a little bit more on his face. So we're going to change my color from a little bit of that rusty color that I did over here on the neck. I'm going to add a little bit of that to my yellow ochre, change my color a little bit. So I'm going to add some of that in there, make my own color. So I've got a little bit of the yellow ochre in there. I hope I'm saying that right. Does everybody else say it that way? Yellow ochre? It always reminds me of the vegetable. I think I'm going to add a little bit more brown to it too. Let's add a little bit. There we go. Now I'm going to take a kind of a scruffy brush. I want to add a little bit of fuzziness to my cheek, or my duckling. I'm going to take a brush that's not a great brush. It's got kind of a rough little edge on it, very unequal amount of hairs on there. And I'm going to use that a little bit to see if I can't accomplish. That's way too dark. Let's add a little bit more water. Now watercolor is going to dry lighter, so you will notice as you're layering colors in that your color will dry a little bit lighter than what you thought it was going to, because that's just what it does when it dries. It's the opposite of what acrylic paints are. Acrylic always dries a little bit darker. This is going to dry a little bit lighter. I'm going to come in with my little brush here and I'm going to give it a little bit of a flick just to create, oh, it did that switching. We can't get through a live without a little bit of switching. All right, let's try. I'm going to do a little bit of flicking here to give my chick a little bit of fuzziness, like so. I can give some a little bit. Okay, so I'll hold this up a little bit so you can kind of see how that little brush, it's just a scruffy little brush. A little scruffier the better. Now I got too big of a white spot here around his eye. I need to fill that in a little bit because that would look way too white. All right, so let's let him sit a little bit. Now he's turning out a little bit more brown than my original one. And I can tweak that a little bit by adding some more yellow on the top, but they're always going to look different. They're never going to look exactly the same. So I'm going to come in with a little bit brighter orange now. So I'm going to choose something like in this family here is what I'm going to be doing my next layer of colors for the duck feet and the duck bill. I'm going to be moving down to a brighter color orange. Give this a tap a little bit. Okay. I'm going to make my orange a little bit of my own. I'm adding a little bit of the yellow, a little bit of that brighter orange because it's not quite the color I want. Let's go ahead and tap, tap, tap. I'm going to pick that up. And then let's add this on to his legs and his feet. I'm going to add some of this on his bill too, but my face is pretty wet, so I need to wait for a little bit. Otherwise, what would happen is if I lay this color into his bill right now, watercolor is going to want to travel wherever the paper's wet. So that orange would just travel right into his face. So I do need to give it a moment to dry a little bit before I continue on. Now I'm putting this on, still leaving some of those brighter colors that I want to see that were behind there. Okay, let's let that dry a little bit. Now let's work a little bit more on his ears. So I'm going to come in. Usually with my little creatures, when I do watercolor, I always like to have a light, a medium, and a dark. So this is going to add another layer. You can create that look by using the same color even, just layering it on more than once. So you can create that look even by having just the same color, just layering it on and creating a medium, a dark, and a light. Okay, so that's going to dry a little bit more in there. Now I'm going to pick up a little bit of that kind of that peachy corally look again. Create another little layer inside of his ears. I'm going to water it down fairly well so it's not too bright. Give it a pop. And then I'm going to come in here and add just a tiny bit more to give it a different contrast. And if my brown runs a little bit into this color, I'm okay with that. It will just add kind of to that softness, shadowiness of the inside ear. Okay, so that's another layer. All right, let's see if we can't brighten up this chick a little bit. She's our duckling. She's looking a little too dark. Now I'm going to come in with this bright yellow and see what happens. It may not be able to brighten it up, but we're going to see. I'm going to come in here and add a little bit of this bright gold to my chick because she was looking a little too dull. I'm going to add that in there, see what we come up with. I'm going to be giving her some rosy cheeks too, so that might add to her a little bit of a look. Okay. All right, let's add a little bit of that goldenness down here as well. So technically, I probably should have added this bright gold on maybe a second time, like after the yellow ochre, it was drying kind of matte. I should have came in and added it then, and then added my darker brown over the top, which would have been another look I could have done. Okay, we'll see how she looks. This little duckling might end up looking a little darker. And let's see, I'm going to let that dry a little bit more before I work a little bit more on there. Let's work a little bit on the purple on that Easter egg. So I'm just going to choose this pretty little violet color here. Add again, going to be doing more of a look. Now, if you want to add a pattern, which I did on my original one, I'm going to come here and I'm going to do a smile face shape here and another smile shape here. By doing that, that's going to add some contour to your drawing so it doesn't look so flat. And I'm going to add in this little stripe there. This one I added some partial polka dots onto it, just like kind of like a, give it a little pattern that way. And down here I did do a little bit of a curvy line and kept it white in here. Now if you want to, you could do this as a wax resist. You could take a color crayon and add some pattern onto your egg that way and have it so it doesn't go into those areas. You could easily do that. Hi, my friend Lena. Thanks for coming in. All right, let's go ahead and put this darker purple here. This is a lot of color, so I'm going to get that tapped in. It's a small little spot. There's the one layer. I'm going to do, this time around, maybe I'll just do a lighter layer up here. But the purple egg looked good with it because it's kind of a complementary color. That golden look to it is a complementary color to the golden color. So that's why I chose purple. It's a complementary color to the color of the chick. So I wanted it to really kind of pop. There we go. There's that. And for the background, I'm going to lighten it up just a little bit by adding more water, giving it a tap, and then lightly adding another color here. Less pigment, so it's going to end up looking lighter. But like I said, you could easily put this in a wax resist and put your color over the top of it, and that will really change the look too. I'm going to take a little bit more of the purple. So I got a little bit more here. Let's go ahead and tap this again. So my colors are pretty wet, but I can come in here and add just another little layer to make it darker. Like that. Come down here, do the same thing. Now because this is a student grade paper, it doesn't have a ton of cotton in it, which means that my paper is going to dry a lot faster and I can layer my colors in more quickly. If this paper had more cotton in it, I would definitely need to wait until it dried a little bit more before I laid those next colors in. Let's work a little bit on those roses. This may be where I want to use my other set because this does have, whoops, this does have a prettier shade of pink in it, and I just want to use pink. I want to make it easy. So I'm just going to take my pink from right here, right in there. I'm just going to put my brush right in there with a little bit of water. And I just want to do it easy, so I'm going to come in and give it a tap. And then I'm going to just do my flowers loosely and add my pink in that way without even mixing a lot. I'm going to use my pencil marks to kind of just add some shape to those. I'm also going to use that pink color for my blanket or my pattern back here. So I'm going to lay in a layer of pink and make kind of a pink pattern. Let's see. Oops, where do I want to go? So that one would be color. This one would be color right here. So I'm just creating a very informal diagonal pattern. Dialogue, funny. Okay, here we go, like that. And then let's come here, add this one. Okay, and then come over to this one. Hopefully I'm doing my pattern right. Move that up so you can see a little bit better. Okay, so color, white color. Let's do this one here. And then over here. And then there. And the other one, I just picked up the peach color, so just kind of a light color here. And I just kind of put that in the other one. So I'm just going to come in here, add that color in, so it's just kind of a more informal back and forth, just a simple little background. And then come in here, add it on there. I didn't put a lot of effort into my background. You want to blend those colors too. If you want to put some of that peach over the pink, that always looks good. Those colors play well together. They look great together. Okay, there we go. All right, now before I get too far, I want to take my I'm going to bring this little gal to life. So I'm going to take my Micron pen. Oh, she does need more orange on her bill yet, but I want to fill these eyes in so I can make her come to life. I'm going to leave just the tiniest bit of white in there in her eyes. Now, if I lose it and I don't have enough white, I can always add it in with a Uniball pen. Oh, switching again. Let's go ahead and switch it over. Okay, so I happened to see that where it jumped, but I don't know why StreamYard's been doing that lately. So you can see all of a sudden she starts coming to life just by adding her little eyes on there. Let's add a little bit more of that orangish color to her bill to separate that out from her face. So I'm going to come in and add a little bit more bright to her bill, like so. Okay, let's add a little bit more here. I'm going to pick up a little bit more of that rusty color too. Layer that in. Tone down her feet just a tiny bit. So this would be kind of considered my darkest color, I guess, is where we would be with that. Let's give her a little bit of a coralish cheek. So I'm going to pick up that same kind of coral that I used for the inside of her ears. I'm going to use that same kind of color for her cheeks. So my face is pretty dry. I'm going to come in and I'm just going to use the tip of my brush and tap in a little bit of color. And I don't necessarily want a perfectly round circle. I'm just popping in some of that color and letting it sit and see what happens, how the magic will just kind of, the color will sit. Now, if you get too much water or too much color on there, take your brush, squeeze it to get a thirsty brush, and then you can tap on here and pick up or lift some of the color if you want to soften the edges of your circles so they're not just like little round apples there. Okay, let's let her sit. Now let's take a look at her background. Now her background, you can do it a couple different ways. Let's pop in some leaves before I get too far on her headdress, and we'll use the same color green for her other leaves too. So I'm just going to pick a green. Just choose something. Give it a pop like that. Then I'm going to pop in some of the green here. Remember, I said that your watercolor is going to dry lighter. So it might look really dark now, but it's most likely going to dry a little lighter. Okay. Depending on what kind of pigments are in your watercolors, depends on how light it's going to dry. I'm going to just lay these ones in here. Just pop in a little bit of green. It doesn't even have to be exact. Just lay in a little bit of green to create this little look of the flowers. Let's see. Maybe put one here too. Let's pick up another pink. So I like that little bright color of pink that I have, that kind of fluorescent pink in this set. It's one of my go-tos. I really like this color. I'm just going to pick it up on the end of my brush again. I'm going to give it a tap here. And I'm going to tap a little bit of that color in here on top of her flowers. And maybe I might even do a little bit on her cheeks. Be really brave. And I might just take a little bit of that color and tap it in on her cheeks, because why not? But that's too much of a line work. So I'm going to give it a tap with a kind of a damp brush. And I'm going to tap that color out, push and pull. So I don't have such harsh lines, but I'm going to push and pull it just to brighten up her cheeks even a little bit more. All right, let's add a little bit of pink to those back roses. So I'm going to use kind of the same color that I had been using. Let's pop in a little bit of color here on these background roses. And then I'm just going to finish it with a navy color, or Payne's Gray is the color that I'm going to be using. I'm just informally coming in here. You can leave some white spots open. Let's see, there was one right here too, wasn't there? I'm going to pick up that magenta color and I'm just going to tap a little bit of it here and there. My roses are pretty wet, so the color will just kind of mix and blend on its own. There we go, like so. Okay, cute, 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 cute. Let's layer in a little bit of that Payne's Gray. So Payne's Gray is this color here. So it's called Payne's Gray, but it's just kind of a navy, pretty color. So let's take a look at where I might be with that one. I always have to check my color card again because I'm not super aware of where that Payne's Gray is in this set. I've used this set somewhat, but haven't used it extensively. So I always got to check to make sure where my color are. Now this is a pretty dark color, so I'm going to make sure I start with tea consistency again, and I can always layer in my color. So here's my darkest color. I'm going to come in and I'm just going to, got a little fuzzy on there. I'm just going to go up and down like a wallpaper feel. So I'm just going to drag my brush down this way. Now, if your flowers are still wet, you might want to give it just a minute or two for it to dry, or just skip around them so you're not getting so close to it, because your paper is probably pretty wet like mine. And watercolor is not permanent, so you could easily rub those images out. If you get too close to it and rub too hard, they're going to rub out, because it's not a permanent, not even close to permanent at this stage. Everything is pretty fresh on this paper. So I'm just moving in quickly, creating up and down strokes as like a watercolor, a wallpaper look. I often get those two words. I've said those, interchanged those so much. I had to giggle at myself last week when we did those poppy drawing, and I went back and looked at that live, because I usually make myself watch them again. Well, hi, Debbie. I usually make myself watch them again. And I kept on, I don't think I said the name of the flower right until 3/4 way through that whole video, because I kept on calling it a poppy. And we had done the poppy, the earlier flower, like that was the flower we had done before. And I kept on calling the pansy the poppy. And then I called it a violet, and I was like, oh my goodness, it took me forever to get the name right of the flower that I was showing you how to do. But you all did some beautiful poppies. The ones who drew along and shared them, your poppies were absolutely beautiful. I so appreciated you sharing them and sharing your ideas of how to create it. They were all turned out beautiful. So thank you for sharing your ideas, your paintings, your drawings. Okay, now as this dries, and if you feel like you need to add a little bit more color to yours, you can let this dry all the way and then come back in and add another layer. I'm just kind of moving quick, so if I wanted to add more color to this, I would just let it dry and then come in and add another layer. But I'm going to pick up my purple, is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take that purple a little bit, that purple that we used on the Easter egg, and I'm going to give that a tap, and then I'm just going to do some informal lines in my background just to create that next little bit of pattern. Now my paper's pretty wet, so that means that my color from these line work could actually bleed out more and not keep a line, but that probably will look just fine in the end as well. Here we go, popping in here, coming down, and that's just going to create just a real. Now, if you need to add a little bit more structure to your painting or your drawing, like I feel like I want to kind of bring her nose out a little bit more, or her bill out a little bit more, I'm going to come in with my #1 micron pen, and I'm just going to do some sketchy lines around her little beak. I'm going to add some line like that. I'm going to give her some eyelashes, just some tiny ones. That. You could come in and strengthen up her ears. And I'm going to be doing some informal sketching. So I'm holding my pen farther back and just adding another quality of sketching. I did not do that on my first one, but I like to change things up, try different things, see what they look like. They might not look that best, but it's worth trying and see what it might look like. And I think this little sketching look here kind of gives her even more of a little bit of a feather look. I'm not even looking to keep my line work exact on how I drew it. I'm just adding my lines in. I like that look of kind of like a continuous line of pen work. And that just can add a little bit more detail work. Those who are using colored pencils or markers, gel pens, you could add a little bit of work that way. I could come in and add a little bit of line work with my Uniball pen. My Uniball, I can bring in some bright highlights. So I could come in and add a few little bit more brighter lines onto my chick. Can add a little bit more fuzziness as well. Come in and add that bright white there as another option. Add another. I like to save it for a little bit of sparkle. So some places, but not necessarily everywhere, you can add a little bit more of your line work. I'm going to come in here and strengthen this line here. So you can bring in your pen work and make it a little mixed media piece and not have it all watercolor. So there's lots of options. You don't have to only do it one way. There's lots of different ways you could do it. And I think she turned out really cute. So this is my original one I did. I always say they never look exactly the same. They're not twins, but they could be sisters, right? And the way they turned out. And they look, I think they're both fun, really fun drawings, and they would make delightful pieces to hang up for Easter and to have on display, or just in your sketchbook to practice your drawing and have for just yourself. Or if you have a little cubicle at work, frame them, put them in a little frame, hang them up where you might see them and enjoy them. And bring yourself a little smile every day when you look at them. Well, that is it for tonight, and I'm going to be coming back on Thursday, and we'll be doing, I think we're going to be doing the daffodil flower on Tuesday is what we're going to be doing on Tuesday to add to our little flower collection of doing flowers. So the month of March is the birthday flower is daffodil, so we'll be doing some sort of daffodil draw and paint along. Well, thanks everyone for joining me tonight. I so appreciate it. And again, thanks for the thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube tonight. Thanks for sprinkling me out if you're on Facebook. And if you haven't subscribed to my page over on YouTube, I'd so appreciate it if you wouldn't mind hitting that subscribe button and hit the bell, as they say. All the things. So thanks so much everyone for joining me, and you have a great evening. Bye now.